Well, good morning. I'm Tim Tait from the Arizona Department of Transportation, and scenes like this are relatively common in the desert. It's part of the reality of desert living, and it's been known to sandblast vehicles and leave behind sandbars on the highway that require cleanup afterwards. And these sandstorms, we call them either dust storms or haboobs if you want to use the technical weather term, are quick-moving and unexpected. Brownouts like this are most common along Interstate 40 and Interstate 10, which are major east-west trade routes through Arizona. So it's been several years since our last major dust storm campaign, and our new campaign focused on earned and social media to achieve our awareness objectives. So our new approach was Pull Aside, Stay Alive. It was developed in partnership with the Highway Patrol, the National Weather Service, and the Arizona Governor's Office of Highway Safety. We really wanted to leverage those relationships to advance our message. Last year, the National Weather Service recorded 25 major dust events in central and eastern Arizona. 25 major events. Many of those events had impacts on the traveling public. So these storms can be miles wide, enveloping entire metro areas, and the outlying areas are at greatest risk, which provide the fewest options for travelers. And as you can see, they can have devastating consequences on those roadways. This is a shot from Interstate 10 from a couple of years ago. So we needed to get drivers' attention and to stress not to enter a haboob. Really, that was the key. Focusing not so much on what to do once they got into one, but not to enter them at all. And that was a real change from our previous messaging, which focused on pulling off the side of the road, turning off your lights, taking your foot off the brake. Those are our standard messages. But this year we wanted to take a new approach, and that was to get drivers not to enter that wall of dust in the first place. Through this campaign, we earned more than 500 media hits internationally, with a PR value exceeding $250,000. And now I'll turn it over to Nicole for the creative.
So as Tim indicated, as you can see in this picture, haboobs are very unique to Arizona. I am new to Arizona. I've been there about 2 years. I grew up in California and grew up driving in fog. And driving in fog, and it's very similar to driving in snow, you have the light reflectivity. So I didn't understand, while visibility is zero visibility, no matter whether it's light or dust, is still zero visibility and has the same consequences. But it was interesting to me that it's a completely different driver perspective when you're driving into dust. And people don't necessarily understand that. So what we did is we took what Tim's team had identified as the key message point, and that was don't drive into it in the first place. But what we really had to do, and what my team was tasked with, is how do you make that message resonate? And I think that no matter what your public safety message is, whether it's click it or ticket, whether it's intoxicated driving or distracted driving, the most important thing is you have to have two things. You have to have a message that resonates with the public, and you have to have great creative and content behind it. So what we looked at was how can we make this resonate with the drivers? And we took upon 1 week of launching the campaign, and it was on Monsoon Safety Awareness Week. So we took a 5-day approach. It was to keep this momentum going for the full 5 days. And the first day, you can go ahead and advance it, Alan. We launched the campaign with a website and with our initial PSA. The website is really just a splash page. You're looking at the entirety of the website. It does have a printable PDF, so you can pull down and get those driving tips. The important part is that you have to pull off to the road. You always have people, am I supposed to put my foot off the brake? Am I supposed to put my hazards on? So this gave you a printable, actually, what to do if you find yourself in a dust storm. But again, we wanted to focus more on not going into it in the first place. So we looked at how we could make creative around that driver's perspective. So I like to say that Tim's team did the heavy lifting on getting the messaging and getting all of these points together. My team sat around watching YouTube trying to find the right video we could use to work from. Because obviously you just don't have it. You don't have that video of driving into a dust storm. Go ahead. So we launched the first day with our public service announcement. And this we aired, we had some paid media through a relationship with the Arizona Broadcasters Association. And because this video was so effective and because we worked with the media team, what ended up with the amount of media, earned media that we received from that day was phenomenal. Tim's team did morning shows. We had one morning show where they freeze framed it, and how long was that bit? About 5 minutes of our lead media person in Phoenix walking through that video with them stopping it and saying, okay, this is the point where you should start pulling over. Here's what happens if you don't pull over at this point. So we had some good momentum going into day 2, and on day 2, we took things a little bit differently. Again, it is called a haboob, is the technical term for that type of a storm. So we had some fun with it. And we put out the Haboob Haiku Challenge. And we launched it through our blog, which I was devastated to learn last night that many of you are not reading. So it's a.blog.blogspot.com. And we launched it through our blog. And it went pretty quickly. By Tuesday afternoon, we had, we planted our own, so all of our own people through personal Twitter accounts, we were trying to kind of seed that. By day 2, the AP picked it up. By day 3, Reuters had picked it up. It went on Weather Channel had one, CNN, the BBC. Over 500 local papers picked up the AP and the Reuters story, including New Zealand. There was a New Zealand daily that picked it up. So it really went viral. And that was what kept it in the news. And we ended up, and I think what happens with this, the best explanation of these is that we had fun, is that you have to take it and get people involved. And yeah, we had a couple of them that were about boobs. But more importantly, we had so many of them who took that message of pull aside, stay off the road, take your foot off the brake, don't put your hazards on. So when we ended up, we retweeted a lot of them. We retweeted the ones that focused on our driving tips. Several of them, again, were picked up. Towards the end of the week, once we were done, we took the top 10 and we kept it going for the entire next week with voting. And vote for your Haboob Haiku winner. The person who ended up winning, I think it's the top one, she obviously had a PR firm. I don't even think she was from Arizona, but she was out there pushing everybody on a daily basis, go out and vote for us. So we really used the public to keep the message resonating throughout the next week. So these are the top 10, or some of the top ones. If you go to the next page, my absolute favorite was Haboob Haiku just might be the best hashtag ever, which we had to agree with. But you can see there, New York Daily News picked it up. Obviously Reuters, Huffington Post. So we really got some momentum behind it. And again, that was because we were willing to have some fun with it and really get that message out there. Go ahead to the next one. And then we went again on our a.blog.blogspot.com. I did a guest blog on the value of social media. And why do we Haboob Haiku? Well, we do it so that we can build an audience in the preparatory time. Any kind of, we just talked about crisis management. You have to build your audience in advance and lay that groundwork at the beginning of when there isn't a crisis. So that in a situation where we have a dust storm come through I-10 and we post it on our Facebook page, the more people that we have who are following us who can share that message, retweet our tweets, and build that awareness that you have to build an audience when times are slow so that when there is a crisis or there is an emergency, you have folks who are listening to your message. So that was our value of social media. And again, this blog got picked up quite a bit. During the entire week, we had just under 16,000 page views on our blog. And then because we had this audience and we had this momentum going, it's not all fun and games. So on the last day, we launched our last video, and again, it was nice because we had some people listening. And then we took it back and hit it back home, that this isn't just about having fun with haboobs and haikus. This is about a real life situation that causes death if you don't pay attention.
In order to get a dust storm, we have to have two primary ingredients. Number one is strong winds and then dry ground. And since local use, fields that have been plowed or not plowed, can also affect exactly how much dust may get picked up. It is difficult to forecast exactly when and where a dust storm may impact. Whenever there are thunderstorms forecast, or you can see thunderstorms developing in an area where you're located or where you're heading, keep the possibility of dust in the back of your mind. It may develop and come upon you suddenly and can create dramatic changes in visibility.
I had no visibility 10, 15 feet ahead of me. I actually pulled off to the side because I was a little worried. Not our car's going to flip over or anything. I was more worried that something's going to happen where we're going to get hit by another vehicle.
With dust storm related accidents, it's high risk and low frequency, so we don't see them a lot, but when we do, it's usually pretty devastating. You have cars that are underneath semis, you have cars in the cars, nobody really slows down, they just go in there blind, and then you're hitting another vehicle at full speed.
There's a lot of smoke mixed in with the dust. They're trying to get to the injured. They're trying to assess how many fatalities they have. They're trying to assist fire department personnel as best they can, and they just can't see what they're doing. It's difficult.
One of our major themes this summer is pull aside to stay alive. We want motorists to know what to do if they encounter a dust storm. When you have limited visibility ahead, that is the time to pull off the side of the road. Here's some tips for drivers if they encounter a dust storm. Don't stop in the emergency lane and get off the paved roadway as soon as possible. Turn off all your vehicle lights. Take your foot off the brake. Stay in your vehicle with your seatbelt on and wait for the storm to pass.
I think people get into a false sense of security. They see traffic still moving. So they're thinking, well, if this guy's in front of me going to power through it, I'm going to power through it, and I'll come out on the other end, and it'll pass by. You don't know that.
Don't waste any time, and don't try to continue going into the storm. Pull aside, stay alive.
So that's it. But again, I think, like we said, the absolute key messages in any of these type of campaigns is you have to have a message that resonates, you have to have great creative, and you have to involve your audience in helping to spread your message.
All right, my name is Dick Kane. I'm the Communications Director for Florida DOT. We kicked off a rather unique bicycle pedestrian safety campaign in our Tampa area last year, and this is how it all began. This video was watched about 460,000 times. We took it down after a month. A very well-intentioned, member of the state legislature, Mike Fasano, who has been a fan of DOT in the past, just thought it went too far. There was a lady from the panhandle of Florida whose husband was killed in a pedestrian crash, and she wanted us to take it down. Most people, the way they reacted to the campaign was, it is graphic, it is gruesome, but I think people are going to get the message that way. So we had to determine, after a while, is the juice worth the squeeze? Are we going to keep it up there? And certainly when a member of the legislature who writes your budget, you have to be very cognizant of the way they feel about it. So we said after a month, we got the attention that we wanted to get, and it made the Drudge Report twice, on a Saturday and Sunday, about the fact that we'd started this new campaign. We're #1 in bicycle pedestrian fatalities. In the past, we didn't really have a great answer for that. I mean, we would say things like, well, how long can you ride a bike or walk in Wisconsin? Well, that's a pretty lame excuse. The fact is we've got about 18 or 19 million residents in the state of Florida, 80 or 90 million tourists, so we need to deal with it, and that's what we're doing now. The total budget campaign was $125,000. It's still ongoing. We have some radio spots that are going, but it's winding down at this point. I'm not going to read the slides, but what we're trying to do is just change behavior, and it's really attitude on behalf of the bicycle and pedestrians. We're not blaming the motorists. I mean, certainly everybody is involved. Everybody has a part to play in safety, but for the most part, it's a dangerous mix of ignorance and also indifference, and we're just trying to make sure people understand when they get out on the roadway, especially in Florida, that they understand, what's coming at them. We're double the national average in pedestrian deaths. Most of the bicycle and pedestrian fatalities occur at night. Alcohol and drug use plays a big role, and we're trying to reduce our fatalities by 20% by 2015. Despite the fact that there has been a downward trend, and our safety folks would tell us that has something to do with the economy and people, vehicle miles traveled is down, we still have a problem with the fact that people are still getting out on the roads and still bicycling and getting killed or injured. Obviously, we want to be recognized for something other than this. Some of the charts that we had on the website, just comparing a 180-pound man to a 3,500-pound car, man always loses. Not engineered with crumple zones, man just crumbles. Just some more stats. Driving under the influence or walking under the influence, bicycling under the influence has a lot to do with that. These are some of the digital billboards that we used in the Tampa Bay area. Again, using trains, tanks, elephants, just to show if it wasn't a car, would you pay more attention if it was some of these other things? Would you see it differently and watch out for each other? Posters that we had, what if cars weren't cars? Just want to make sure that people see cars differently. So we've identified the problem, that we want to make sure that we handle it. Dangerous by Design, which is Transportation for America, we're always #1 in those 4 cities: Orlando, Tampa, Jacksonville, Miami, Fort Lauderdale. So we want to identify what the problem is, identify the priority areas. So we've gone through the 10 top priority areas in the state where we want to alleviate deaths and injuries. These are some of the engineering applications we're looking at. Some of you are probably familiar with them. We're testing a lot of things in Florida. We're looking at best practices from other states and essentially trying to modify behavior of the bicyclists, the pedestrians, and the motorists as well. This is something that we have in the St. Pete area, and the arrow pointing down that lights up and it flashes. So anything that really gets people's attention when you're crossing, especially at mid-block, where people may not be paying attention. The results, obviously they just started in November of 2011, so I'm not going to tell you that I can give you, great results already, but what I can tell you is that over the last couple of years, since we really have put more of an emphasis on engineering, enforcement, and education in that area, pedestrian crashes were down 20% and bike crashes were down 10%. And obviously, throughout the state, as we identify these other areas, we want to make sure that we're able to do that statewide and by 2015 have a reduction of 20%.
I'm Luanne Grandinetti. I'm the Manager of Communications at the Tennessee Department of Transportation. And we're talking about signing fatalities. And I guess the communications office really can't take credit because it was actually our CEO, our commissioner, that in April decided that in looking at our 2011 experience, we had record-setting reductions. We had under 1,000 folks who died on Tennessee highways, and so that set us up for a bad year in 2012. In 2011, people were not driving as much as they are now, so we've seen that increase in mileage driven, and our awareness efforts had increased. We spend over $20 million a year in safe driving initiatives in Tennessee. Of course, most of that money coming from NHTSA, which is most of your cases. So here are the numbers. As you see, in 2011, we had a significant decline since 2004, and of course, as I said, that's primarily due to all of our efforts that we put into that. So with 946, what we did was, our Kendall Poole, who is our director of the Governor's Highway Safety Office, which is under our agency, sat down with our commissioner back in April. And they were quite disturbed at the numbers. We were 67 deaths ahead of last year. And so with that in mind, knowing that in our agency we control the messaging on the dynamic message signs, the DMSs, Commissioner Schroer actually decided himself that he wanted to post these fatalities every day. And they looked at what we might accomplish by that. We're thinking about 600,000 folks see it at least once a day. I see it three or four times every day when I drive in and out. But like in everything that we do, we live by numbers, but this is a number that's really hard to come up with because you have dynamic message signs in all 4 of your major cities, Memphis, Nashville, Knoxville, and Chattanooga, and you have several interstates, and then you have your high ADT numbers, and then you have 51 message boards, and who knows where that ends. So we tried to do an estimate, and we came up with about 600,000 a day. And we have 151 boards. We have Nashville has the most with 52, and the others around the 20 or 30 range. And also another factor that we looked at was that distracted drivers might not see this. If you're distracted, you're looking down and texting, you're driving through traffic trying to figure out which lane to get into town because these are all in urban areas, you might not see them. And as I said, we spend about $20 million a year addressing these behaviors. And the morbidity factor was discussed at the top levels in our agency when this approach first came to the table. What are people going to think when we're posting death numbers? That was the first thought. The second thought was, is this a deviation from the FHWA guidelines? Heretofore, in our agency, we've always been really protective of the messages on the DMS boards. We have people who say, hey, we're having a soccer tournament, and we have 2,000 people. Can you tell people to get off at, Demumbrian Street? No, we don't. That's not the purpose for them. Federal highway guidelines say. And of course, if you have DMSs, you know that what those guidelines are is that you can use, they're for messages for drivers primarily. You can use them for safety messages if it's part of a safety campaign. And that's what we've always stuck to until this. And so what we kind of threw into the mix there was, well, from Memorial Day to Labor Day is 100 days of summer heat, which is it's a driving campaign. And so we kind of thought, well, we'll see what happens. So that's how we sort of got around it. Their guidelines anyway, right? So when we started on April 30th, we had 288 fatalities, which, as I said, was 67 more than we had the previous year, the same time. And this is what the message board reads. Tennessee roadway fatalities this year, 288. This is what the commissioner said in his news release. Bottom line, this is an unacceptable increase, and I think it's important that drivers know just how many people have already died on our roadways this year. And so the game plan was to post these messages when there were no other motorist guidance needed, which is, as I said, a little bit of a departure from the federal highway guidance. They are updated every day at 10 a.m., Monday through Friday. And we also provide related messages with them. For example, don't text and drive, seatbelt messages. And then we posted them through the 100 days of summer heat. Right off the bat, they were the lead story in all four major cities. The stories have continued over the summer and are still continuing when milestones, and milestones is a positive word, I think, and this is negative. So when you reach like 500, 600, then the media outlets tend to run stories again. Can you do that? Just to give you a quick example, this was the commercial appeal in Memphis. This is actually an opinion from Dr. Monoy John, I'm not sure. Anyway, if you go to the end of the article, run on down there somewhere, I didn't highlight it unfortunately, maybe the next page. Anyway, he talks about how it's important to get this in the face of everyone. There it is. A few weeks ago, when I picked up my daughter at the airport, the signage notified me that the number of deaths in Tennessee roadways had gone up to 593, and now we're at 693. Keep on going, I think. Next. So far, the number of deaths since April, when the signage was started, have not declined compared to last year. This effort may be more, it may take more than data, maybe a driving coach, but TDOT has it right by displaying the data to increase awareness and an attitude and behavior change. Okay. Go to, it doesn't matter, I don't want to go through all of them, but just another one or two. I guess me. Here's Channel 5's, this is Nashville's TV station. As you can see, road fatality numbers, and they're all the same. They all, it's a positive message to a negative issue where they're basically saying, hey, this is bad. This is pretty bad. Okay, go on to the next. I'll go to the next slide. You don't have to do that one. They're all pretty much the same. Just showing you that we got just tons of coverage on it. Okay, so the morbidity factor. I answer a lot of the emails that people write in about this particular issue. John Hall, who's with me, he answers a lot of emails about construction, that sort of thing. But what we had kept seeing was, and I would say we've gotten less than 50 emails on this, which is not really a large amount, just to be honest. But about 60 to 70% of them are negative. And they're similar to this. This email is in response to the never-ending death toll on Tennessee highways. I can assure you that the only thing I observe are the total deaths continuing to rise. Who is responsible for these messages? The Grim Reaper? And then the positive are sort of like this. This is pretty represented. If just one life is saved, it will be a success. I think the posting numbers and unfortunately seeing them go up will put it in the forefront of drivers and passengers' minds rather than being a nebulous number tallied somewhere. So, like I said, those are two representative examples. More people don't like them than do like them, but again, less than 50 folks have decided to email us about it and call about it. So I think what our whole attitude has been is when we're accompanying these with the driver's messages, like we are, lights on when raining is the law. It was very gratifying to see that message. It's in the conversation. That's the thing that we have seen. John spoke recently to a Lifesavers conference, I believe it was, wasn't it? Yeah. And throughout the question, what do you think? What do you think? And people said, I don't like it. Yeah, we've talked about it in our office, and we're like, that's the point. You are talking about it. And that's what we're trying to do, is keep it in the public discourse so that people realize, the Governor's Highway Safety Office Director, Kendall, said the thing he said, some of my friends have said, wow, the numbers really went up this weekend. And he said, for those of us in safety, we see that all the time. The public never sees that. They just hear some number thrown out when we do a news release at the end of the year, halfway through the year, well, we have 1,000 deaths. We went over the number, or we're under the number. But every day when you're seeing, and this morning we checked the message boards and it's at 7:53. Over the weekend, on Friday when I left, it was 7:47, so it jumped up 6 over the weekend. And people see that, and it's now kind of embedded in their brain that, hey, these are real people out there. And that's another thing that we see is folks saying, these are people's wives, mothers, and children that are getting killed. And it really is kind of like dicks in your face a little bit. But we feel like we have seen the numbers drop enough. We're at 37 over now instead of 63 over. Don't know if this is the reason why or not. I mean, there's no way to know that. But we feel like it has been a good response by us to try to get the conversation going about deaths on the highway. 63, 37. And I've said basically all of this. Oh, and the final thing is, recently, which of course NHTSA is part of the federal government, right? They were in our office doing audits on what they do, I guess, looking at the money and how we spent it, and they have praised, in fact, we're probably going to get an award for this because of our actions. So You know, I don't know if the feds will change, the Federal Highway Administration will change their guidance on this or not. Probably not, because I think the one now I'm looking at is 2007, so they haven't in 5 years. But at least it's being recognized by safety officials across the nation.